And staying with this very issue, let's look at the implications of this particular ruling. We're now joined by Lulu White, Elections Management and Consulting Agency of Africa CEO, and Grant Masterson, who's the head of programs at the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. Let me thank you both for your time this afternoon. I'll start with you, Lulu. Would you say that the ruling, in fact, the rulings have clarified legal uncertainties?
Definitely they have. I think the biggest issue, I'm among the very first people that were actually complaining about the entrance level with regards to the participation of independent candidates in this particular election. So the 15% falling away actually does definitely level the playing field. And as far as independent candidates being able to submit their notification to become candidates for this particular election, they only need to just submit the 1,000 signatures and also the deposit that they would obviously need to pay. So as far as that is concerned, it's definitely a good move. It's leveling the playing field. With regards to the 200-200 split, I do hold the same view that the Constitutional Court has, that the applicants really did not show how exactly is it that the split makes one vote more valuable, or independent political parties' votes more valuable than independent candidates' votes. So I do really think that the judgments have been fair, were fair.
All right, and for you, Grant?
Yeah, it was, I think, a fair and balanced judgment. I think that the courts have ruled in affirming the separation of powers that always exists. They were not going to step into the territory of dictating to Parliament as to how it goes about its business. And they've always been very good in staying in their lane when it comes to affirming the separation of powers. And I think that as far as the judgment's outcomes are concerned, exactly as Lulu said, it's encouraging that the parity that has been established between a political party and an independent candidate, 1,000 votes to be nominated, I think is a progressive decision. On the 200-200 split, I think that there is still arguments that can be made, but clearly the candidates didn't make those arguments when they sat before the court. And so the court has affirmed that the IEC can go ahead under the current Electoral Amendment Act. And as you said, as you were asking your reporter, it's very important that the IEC gets clarity. We are very, very close to the elections now. Several months is not a long time for them to prepare, and so they're putting a brave face on this, but it's very good that we do have final clarity on the legislative framework which we will go into for 2024.
And, one of the things that Grant, the BUSA, in fact, is saying, that's Build One South Africa, they say that for them, looking at the fact that what the court had to say about the Electoral Amendment Act, it means that according to them, an old system is coming into play, still staying in. And then they're saying that for them, it means then that independent candidates now have an even tougher, battle in order to be able to get into the elections now. I wonder then if looking at what they're saying now, just how stacked up are the odds when it comes to independent candidates going forward?
Well, just numerically, that's a fact. You have independent candidates who can only contest 200 out of the 400 available seats, whereas political parties are contesting the full 400. Now, there is some rationale behind the current system because it's very, very difficult without making major changes to the current Electoral Act in its entirety to change almost our entire electoral system to make things fair. But it is a fact what Build One South Africa says, that the independent candidates numerically are disadvantaged. They're contesting 200 seats out of the 400, whereas political parties get to have their cake and eat it. They're contesting all 400 seats. So that numerically does seem to be a fact. What the courts have affirmed, however, is that that does not materially impact on the ability of these elections to be free and fair and timely. And those are the three criteria that the Constitution requires for the elections to be considered constitutional. And so whilst it may be, that independent candidates have a harder time to contest, the Con Court has judged in this case, it does not mean that the elections are patently unfair.
Lulu, some are saying that the fact that now the threshold, it's about 1,000 signatures, they say that this opens up the floodgates and it could lead to all kinds of administrative delays. I wonder, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think elections generally are the process that involves independent candidates does actually open up the floodgates, and perhaps that is what a vibrant democracy is about. A vibrant democracy is actually about the man on the street being able to participate in a particular process. So I think in that particular light, if we have to look at it in that particular light, it's a good thing that people then will have the choice or will be able to contest an election at whatever level without any limitations thereon. But also because, and I heard in the judgment, they also made parities also with regards to the municipal elections as well. We also have to take the same and say, okay, let's compare it with regards to municipal elections. We haven't really seen the floodgates that a lot of people have actually been concerned with when it comes to municipal elections as well. So it could be that people that are saying that it's just a fear of the unknown. But in terms of leveling the playing field, this was a move that was absolutely necessary because it does not limit anybody from being able to access access to being able to be on the ballot paper.
And Lulu, I wonder then, when it comes to how things unfold post the elections, of course, that maybe let's say some of them are able to make it into Parliament as MPs. Do you think that, this fight is over, or could we see some of them bring this up in Parliament to try and make sure that the laws are changed going into, some other elections that we will have as a country?
They would need to obviously have the necessary support in Parliament if they were to reopen that particular fight once they won these elections. We have seen with the type of democracy that we have that unfortunately most of these political parties end up having to bargain and have coalitions and sign coalitions with other political parties so that they have their decisions being made or whatever favorable outcomes that they're looking for in Parliament. So if they are to advance this argument and take it further in court, they would need the necessary majority support of the members of the Parliament in order for them to be successful in that bid. But at least this is just the first step, and it's only time that will tell where we go from here.
And Grant, the part of the ruling when it comes to to the numbers and the signatures, it says that it's suspended for 24 months to give Parliament, of course, the opportunity to remedy the constitutional defects giving rise to the constitutional invalidity in the Electoral Amendment Act. Let's explain them to the viewer, because there are some who simply say that, okay, so does this come into effect in 24 months or is it now? What happens then?
Yeah, a suspension of a judgment means that the relevant parties do have 24 months before the effect of that judgment becomes law. So that's definitely the case, that the Parliament does have 24 months to remedy it. Now, we need to go back a little bit and remind ourselves that where we are today is the end of a process that started with the courts giving Parliament a 24-month suspended judgment in the New Nation movement. And the current process has really dragged on and taken a lot longer than many people had hoped, and certainly it took a lot longer than the 24 months. The Parliament and the Minister of Home Affairs had to go back to the courts on multiple occasions and ask for extensions. So we need to immediately now be asking the Department of Home Affairs to be asking Parliament, how soon can you start? Because we've seen this before, literally at the beginning of this own process. There was a 24-month suspension to the judgment to give Parliament time to make the necessary changes, and we missed multiple deadlines. So another 24-month suspended judgment here feels very familiar and not necessarily in a good way.
And I was going to ask that, Lulu, because we've been here before. Deadlines have been missed, as Grant is saying. So how confident are you that right now this particular deadline will be met?
Look, I think the reality of, unfortunately, of the people that make these laws cannot be rushed for whatever purpose and reason. And yes, as Grant rightly articulates, we must have an expectation that there will be extensions to the processes. However, what is comforting is the fact that the IEC has already, with regards to the regulations for the Electoral Amendment Act, the IEC had already held off until this particular judgment. So after today, the IEC has affirmed that they will be going ahead in creating those regulations so that the immediate things that can start happening are able to then be factored in. That is with regards to that deposit for the 1,000 signatories. So that can already be something that is factored in within the regulations, and people will not be held back because of the suspension. With regards to others, we can just hope and pray, unfortunately.
I suppose that's all we can do. But Grant, I'm going to give you the final bite on this one. There's one thing that, people seem to forget. It's not as easy to get a seat in parliament, is it?
It's certainly not. And so for the independents, they don't even have the machinery that political parties have to rely on. Even the smallest political parties have been able to establish brands which people recognize, voters recognize. So for an independent candidate, you can't even rely on brand recognition and brand association. It's tough, and it's going to be tougher for independent candidates to win a seat just competing on a level playing field. And as I said, you can make the argument that Build 1 SA did try and make unsuccessfully, that simply 200 out of the 400 means it's not a level playing field. But that doesn't mean that it's not that it's an unconstitutional playing field, according to the court. So it's going to be tough with independent candidates. It'll be very interesting to see how many of them can get into parliament. And those that do get into parliament will really have walked an uphill battle. And congratulations to them.
And I suppose, I have a sneaky suspicion that this is not the end of our conversation with the two of you. It may end now, but I feel like there's going to be lots of installments as far as this conversation is concerned, because as you both say, it's going to be an interesting time leading to 2024. But let me thank you both for your time and for helping us understand some of what the court had to say this afternoon. That was Lulu White, Elections Management and Consulting Agency of Africa CEO, and Grant Masterson, Head of Programs at Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa.